Микрофон работает? Ага, все, вот так вот, да. Уважаемые коллеги, доброго дня. Давайте продолжим пленарные сессии. Мы постепенно переходим к академической программе. Завтрашний день полностью посвящен нашему главному герою, патрону университета, профессору Канту. Сейчас мы собрались здесь существенными российскими философскими силами для того, чтобы поговорить о мировом понятии философии в современных условиях, в поисках нового будущего. Обсуждение будущего философии является традиционной гуманитарной темой, преследующей философию как область знаний на протяжении последних 2500 лет. А обсуждение того, что такое философия сейчас в современном мире и какова ее роль в современной России, является более чем актуальной темой. Сегодня у нас в пленарном заседании участвуют Абдусалам Абдукеримович Гусейнов, директор Института философии РАН, академик Российской академии наук. Алексей Павлович Козырев, декан философского факультета МГУ имени Ломоносова. Феликс Евгеньевич Ажимов, декан факультета гуманитарных наук Высшей школы экономики. И Роман Викторович Светлов, директор Высшей школы философии Балтийского федерального университета. Я скажу несколько слов для вступления, для того, чтобы обозначить определенные рамки и, с другой стороны, максимально их раздвинуть. Давайте сейчас попробуем где-то попросить, а где-то заставить наших спикеров высказаться настолько откровенно, насколько может позволить себе философ здесь и сейчас. Высказаться о философии. Коллеги, зачем мы здесь? Мы собрались говорить о философии как о мировом понятии. Присутствующие здесь в зале Нина Анатольевна Дмитриева с коллегами предложили вот такую вот тему для философского конгресса, цитируя Канта, а мы ее всячески поддержали. И о философствовании как о некотором виде когнитивно-антропологической деятельности, свойственной человеку. Давайте начнем с того, что попробуем правильно поставить вопросы. На чем настаивали Кант и Хайдеггер, например, среди многих других коллег по цеху. Что это философия сейчас? Универсальный язык жизни по-прежнему, создающий культуру. Например, философским языком говорят физики, когда им не хватает своего языка, чтобы сказать об устройстве мира. Это именно философия физики принудила математиков создать М-теорию, чтобы двинуться дальше, к пределу познания. Так это или нет? Философия в этом случае есть поиск пределов. Философия и идеология, где последнее – это система самоописания общества, если следовать за Николасом Луманом. Они противоположны, контрарны, контрадикторны, смертельны друг для друга. Давайте подумаем над этим здесь и сейчас. Есть повседневные паттерны, связанные со смыслом жизни и смыслом смерти. Является ли это делом философии и философов, или они пережили себя и теперь этим занимаются масс-медиа, и позиция философов никому не интересна? Стала ли философия архаичным наследием прошлых поколений будущего? Возможна ли культура без философии? Когда мы говорим о философии, подразумеваем ли мы ее мировое понятие? Говорим ли мы, что это глобальный процесс или это национальные традиции, из которых собирается мировое понятие? И которые при некотором успехе становятся интернациональными, как это случилось с Кантом. В мировой истории идей его философия породила устойчивую традицию как апологетов, так и критиков. Франц Брентано в 1898 году в своем докладе о будущем философии назвал будущее философии королевским имея в виду, что возникнет некоторая универсальная философская система, которая будет лежать в основании любой точки зрения на мир и человека в нем. Ричард Рорти в лекции под названием «Философия и будущее», которая была прочитана в Белграде в 1994 году, сказал так: «Мы не должны претендовать на роль общую со жрецами и мудрецами. Наша роль больше сходна с ролью инженеров или юристов, в то время как жрецы и мудрецы разрабатывают свою программу. Современным философам, подобно инженерам и юристам, сначала должно выяснить, что нужно их клиентам». И предложил Ричард Рорти идеал космополитической демократии, который не выдержал проверку времени. Упомянутый уже сегодня заместителем председателя правительства Российской Федерации Илон Маск действительно сказал несколько недель назад, высказал гипотезу, что мы увидим в конце следующего года искусственный интеллект умнее человека. Мы уже спросили здесь, вот, собравшись сегодня утром, что значит умнее. Возможно, что философия – это то, что останется последним, что не сможет создать генеративный искусственный интеллект. Или, если угодно, коллеги, сымитировать. Или это первое, что он создаст, когда сформируется достаточная когнитивная способность. Мы сейчас не знаем ответа на этот вопрос. И, возможно, именно это предопределит новое будущее. Итак, ответственна ли философия вообще за то, что называется будущее? И создала ли она за последние 2500 лет своей эволюции достаточные к этому инструменты? Уважаемые коллеги, с вашего позволения я начну с Абдусалама Абдукеримовича. Прошу вас иметь в виду следующее, что у нас с вами времени, давайте уточним, сколько, когда мы должны закончить. 14:40, 14:45 мы должны закончить. Я не устанавливаю ни для кого жесткого тайминга, прошу начинать. Пожалуйста, Абдусалам Абдукеримович. Нажмите кнопку, да.
Не
наклоняйтесь, он хорошо.
Спасибо. Ну, я должен сказать, что тема Конгресса является самой большой интригой этого Конгресса. Мировое понятие философии, интрига состоит в том, что это, конечно, понятие Канта, но отнюдь не центральное и не то, вокруг которого всегда шли дискуссии. И тот тон обсуждения, который сейчас предложил Александр Александрович, такое импровизация, вольная, значит, рассуждение, предложил нам как бы дать наше собственное видение того, что есть сегодня мировая философия. Сейчас у нас складывается такой обычай, когда формируются философские кружки, чтобы совместно читать тексты. Это очень хороший обычай, но все равно, конечно, на Конгрессе мы не можем это практиковать. Вот для этого другая должна быть аудитория. Но все-таки, когда мы говорим о понятии мировой философии, какие-то вещи, которые зафиксировал Кант, мне кажется, должны быть исходными. И они очень важны для понимания самого существа дела. Какие это были признаки? Первое. Это понятие, которое он формулирует в отличие от школьной философии и в противоположность школьной философии. Школьная философия – это, ну, так скажем, грубо университетская философия, академическая философия, схоластическая философия. Вот. И в чем отличие? В том, что школьная философия, она как бы дает формальный анализ текстов, она, значит, демонстрирует большую виртуозность, знания, аналитичность и так далее. В то время как мировая философия или философ, который как бы выступает от имени мировой философии, он соотносит познания, в том числе философские, научные познания, с человеческими целями. И он ориентирован на эти человеческие цели. И если, скажем, школьный философ – это виртуоз ума, знаток, профессионал, то мировой философ – это мудрец, это учитель. Это первое явное отличие. Дальше. Те цели, к которым апеллирует философ, когда он выступает в роли учителя, это такие цели, которые доступны всем людям как разумным существам. То есть это те цели, которые вообще все люди практикуют в той или иной мере. И вот это приближение понятия мировой философии с тем понятием, которое фигурирует в человеческом опыте, мне кажется, это очень важный признак. И он говорит, что мировая философия, в общем-то, как бы соответствует тому смыслу, который заложен в самом термине. Сейчас я закончу. Дальше. То есть то, что это интересует каждого. Затем, значит, он почему-то здесь все время, значит, связывает это с космическим взглядом. Конспектус космикус. В чем тут дело? И вот это с вашей идеей будущего. Почему космическое? Потому что, значит, мировая философия дает такой синтез, тотальный синтез, который охватывает также мироздание. И поэтому это может существовать только в форме идеи. И если, скажем, нам говорить о будущем как философам, и если идти в логике Канта, а философия – это дело, философия – это разум, предмет, значит, философии – это разум. И дело более конкретное, применительно к разуму, это сформулировать его основания и дойти до его принципов. И дойти, значит, дать будущее с философской точки зрения, это означает сформулировать те принципы, которые являются первыми, основными, которые лежат в основе всех остальных познаний. И те принципы, до которых мы, значит, оставаясь в пределах теоретического разума, никогда дойти не можем. И в этом смысле будущее остается перед нами, остается именно как теоретиками, в лучшем случае в качестве тайны. Тайны, которая, ну, тайна, она есть тайна, она может обернуться и одной стороной, и другой стороной. Вот так бы я в двух словах
Хорошо,
ответил.
спасибо большое, Абдусалам Абдукеримович. Алексей Павлович, передаем вам эстафету.
Спасибо большое, Александр Александрович.
Thank you, Alexander Alexandrovich. Thank you for inviting us for this Congress. We have got quite a big representation of Moscow State University here, more than 20 people, and I'm happy to see our young colleagues here. So Kant celebrates 300 years. Not everyone can live up to this age, even in the memory. But I think that this celebration and this occasion is a very good chance to, to make our philosophical community younger, because we appeal to somebody who is old, somebody who is wise, but actually philosophy is young. So when is the person wise? When does the person become wise? When he becomes old. But when does a philosopher ask questions? When a philosopher is young. Because, well, we asked some time ago, we asked about the psychological age of Aristotle. So probably he psychologically was about 10 or 11, because he asks a lot of questions, what the world is like, what the world is about. And all the questions that we are discussing now are the children's questions. And I would like to focus on this aspect. Don't make philosophy old. Don't make philosophy a task and interaction of people who have become old mentally, morally, psychologically. So it's not just it's preaching. It's not preaching about some traditional values. I don't mind traditional values, but philosophy is a science. And all of us here, so we are the doctors of philosophy, we are the professors of philosophy, and that's what I would like to think about. So we have to formulate the principles of an academic philosophy. So how can we find the indication that philosophy is an academic science? So if philosophy is a science, so it's a science everywhere, whether it is China, the USA, Iran, or, India, or any other country. Of course, it has got some national features, and Danilevsky mentioned that in his works, but we proceed from some kind of scientific paradigm in philosophy. Even the exam that we take in the history of philosophy is oriented at the scientific paradigm, how this science has been developing since 17th century. So, but it's much wider. Aristotle was the founder of academic philosophy, the same as Plato. Yeah, so they used to be the founders of the philosophical knowledge, and they stated something that we still use in our philosophical background. Yeah, of course we have to develop the philosophical mindset with our students, but it must be scientific or academic philosophy, and we have to understand what this philosophical academic character or research character of philosophy is. So it's not only about some strict discussion procedures, but don't make it vague. And don't make it so spontaneous, and don't make it as spontaneous speculation, wise speculation. I think that philosophy today is in very big demand in the society, much more bigger than it is in the academic field. You used to see young business people who asked us to carry out or to hold a philosophical dispute or philosophical debate. So in their companies. And when people come to you with such a request, it's not only about talking, having some conversation, but it means that people have got some request, and it's a kind of request which is filled with life, because they want to know how to build their life, how to build their business, how to negotiate and communicate, and how to identify the national archetypes, mentality, mindset of your partner, like whether it is Chinese or Indian. This background is very pragmatic. It's very pragmatically oriented. And we must support this. We must develop the academic programs which focus on it. Recently, in our faculty, we have seen a number of programs which study the technologies, the applied philosophy, applied intellectual sciences, biointelligence, so, and the boundaries of the intelligence. And it's not only about medicine, but it's more about philosophy, because philosophy gives the answers to many fundamental questions. But together with this academic character of philosophy, you have to consider its social and pragmatic status. And finalizing it, I would mention that philosophy has always been an activity of free mind, critical mind, critical reason, and it's absolutely improper to see some or to hear some voices in our society which asks us to behave ourselves, to be guided by some certain principles. So because we are free in our spirit, and we cannot be put in some frames or in some borders. We cannot be guided only by bans and restrictions, because in such a way we wouldn't make any breakthroughs. We wouldn't stand up for the challenges. We wouldn't counteract the challenges of new technologies and artificial intelligence. So Kant mentioned it in his teaching about antinomies. So because such challenges cannot be guided only by the logic. So we discuss such issues here in our Congress today. But to be able to do that, we have to be free in our mind, and we it's not about some, I don't know, some savage programs and projects, but it's about our common work. My colleagues recently have been to Iran, and they participated in the joint project about mind and philosophy. And in spite of differences in our cultural background, we could cooperate very well within one project. Or some other colleagues went to Tibet, and they also studied or just participated in some other mutual joint project there. We can find mutual understanding. We can share the space, because philosophy is a perfect background for negotiations and discussions and for overcoming our contradiction. But to make it such, we have to support philosophy, and we have to motivate it, encourage it to develop faster. So we have to establish the national rewards and national awards in philosophy. We have to acknowledge the effort of those who have contributed to its major development. That's why it is so encouraging to see the support of the authorities, the government. It means that the government turns its face to philosophy, and philosophy has become socially acknowledged science. So we are the participants of this common mind, this communal mind at work. So we participate in such communal mind. And I would like us to keep this intention and this attitude to our further work. Thank you.
Феликс Евгеньевич, прошу вас.
Спасибо большое, Александр Александрович, уважаемые коллеги. Алексей Павлович сказал о том, что Московский университет достойно представлен на Конгрессе. Я не могу не сказать теперь о том, что Высшая школа экономики тоже не менее достойно представлена. Конечно, не 20 человек, но более 15 точно у нас в зале присутствует, включая нескольких студентов. Спасибо большое за предоставленную возможность выступить, поделиться своими соображениями на данную тему. Тема, мне кажется, еще более сложная, чем философия Канта, поскольку это вопрос вообще о статусе философии, о роли ее в обществе, ее влиянии на будущее, на настоящее. Существует ровно столько, сколько, наверное, сам феномен философии присутствует. Но вот спасибо Нине Анатольевне за то, что у нас есть путеводная звезда, и мировое понятие философии, вот этот Кант, или философия по мировому понятию, вот этот кантовский концепт, мне кажется, может нам помочь, как вы сказали, Александр Александрович, правильно поставить вопрос. Мне кажется, нужно смотреть на эту формулировку сквозь призму развития философии. То есть вот, мне кажется, мы можем себе позволить вслед за Кантом поставить вопрос таким образом. Что произошло в философии, что произошло с человеком, философствующим субъектом, что он начинает делить философию на школьную и на мировую, на концептус космикус и академическую философию, школярскую философию, схоластическую философию. То есть есть некий запрос на то, чтобы философия опять стала мудростью, чтобы философ опять вновь обрел статус мудреца. Как сказал Алексей Павлович, вот, мудрец – это старик, но вот он опять мудрец, поскольку в детстве и в юности мог себе позволить ставить философские вопросы. Вот нас часто, философов я имею в виду, приглашают в СМИ порассуждать на ту или иную тему. На радио, к блогерам. И один вопрос, мне кажется, звучит всегда, независимо от того, каков сюжет диалога журналиста и философа. Этот вопрос следующий. В чем смысл жизни? Этот вопрос, конечно, иногда формулируется в такой издевательской интонации, и пытаясь ответить на него, всегда думаешь, вот ответить серьезно, да, то есть указав, где этот смысл, или рассказать, значит, о тех вариантах, которые возможны в истории философии, или отослать к религии, или много разных вариантов. И мне кажется, что спрашивающий журналист, человек, задающий такой вопрос на публику, под запись, все-таки это не библейский Пилат, который вопрошает об истине, подразумевая, что никакой ответ на этот вопрос невозможен. То есть он искренне ставит этот вопрос, все-таки без издевки. И если бы он ставил этот вопрос с издевкой, то, наверное, он вообще бы не приглашал к себе в студию философа для того, чтобы тот поделился с ним своими размышлениями на заданную тему. И тут, конечно, как для профессионального философа, для меня встает еще один вопрос. Как это влияет на содержание философии? Я имею в виду ее вот это омерщение. Девальвирует ли это академическое содержание или, наоборот, академическое содержание как бы отпугивает от философии по мировому понятию? Вопрос очень сложный. Вот мне кажется, в истории философии был только один период, когда ее статус был неимоверно высок, колоссально высок. Это как раз период немецкого идеализма. Но как оптимист я верю, что у философии есть еще будущее, и на этот период можно будет смотреть как на начальный период. Возможно, о каком-то ренессансе мы имеем право говорить. Вот немецкая философия была популярна и в то же время не проигрывала в академическом содержании. То есть ее назвать простой, популярной, язык ни у кого не повернется. И вот этот баланс, как можно достичь? То есть какая констелляция в обществе, в умонастроениях должна случиться, чтобы философ стал вот такой крупной фигурой? Можно ли его называть вновь мудрецом, или все-таки это, как говорил один европейский философ, арбитр в споре интерпретаций? Вот, Александр Александрович, у вас прозвучало слово «идеология». Вот мы, философы отечественные, российские, боимся этого слова по понятным причинам. Есть у нас родимое пятно на всей нашей философской биографии. Причем наверняка, не наверняка, а я уверен, что и в этот период философии, в советской философии были очень большие, существенные достижения, и можно даже говорить о некоторой преемственности в русской философии вообще. Вот действительно мы очень часто слышим вопрос со стороны государства, со стороны чиновников. Если со стороны журналистов это вопрос как бы банальный, в чем банальный я имею в виду, в простоте своей формулировки, в чем смысл жизни, то со стороны власть имущих мы слышим запрос, вот вы же философы, да, почему вы не помогаете нам участвовать в разработке концепции будущего нашей страны? Как жить дальше? Какой цивилизационный выбор в России может быть? Какой выбор не может быть? И поскольку философы российские и русские очень осторожны, стараются уходить от этой ответственности, да, от этой проблематики, от этих диалогов, мне кажется, мы вот сейчас в 2024 году в состоянии сделать шаг навстречу не в том смысле, чтобы дать ответ на этот вопрос. Действительно, они все готовы нести ответственность, но, по крайней мере, помочь грамотно сформулировать, ну, как в современном языке чиновников и предпринимателей это звучит, или проектных менеджеров, сформулировать грамотное ТЗ, техзадание. То есть давайте попробуем сформулировать, а чем может быть философия полезна. Я согласен, вот Константин Ильич сегодня анонсировал встречу, которая будет вот через 20-15 минут. Это как раз встреча о будущем, по поводу будущего философии. Останется она в университете в качестве дисциплины, в каком статусе. И хорошо, что это будущее, вот на примере этого вопроса, оно полностью, мне кажется, в наших руках. Вот Алексей Павлович привел примеры по поводу взаимодействия с предпринимателями, с бизнесменами, у которых есть запрос на философствование, на философское осмысление. Я тоже приведу пример очень уникальный в развитии примера Алексея Павловича, Центр изучения сознания, да, который на факультете Московского университета есть. Вот мы сейчас в Высшей школе экономики на факультете гуманитарных наук открыли программу, 9-месячную программу, называется «Философия для предпринимателей», где мы на самом деле не рассказываем предпринимателям о том, как правильно заработать, значит, деньги, как построить бизнес, скорее о том, как и когда нужно остановиться. То есть за этим названием на самом деле скрывается экзистенциальная проблематика. То есть у нас вот проходят там семинары по феноменологии, о том, что такое аналитическая философия, о русском исихазме. Ну, то есть очень пестрая тематика. И у нас уже 2 группы обучаются бизнесменов, где мы ни слова о бизнесе не говорим, ну не нам им рассказывать о бизнесе. Вот, и уже в 3-ю группу есть очередь. Это тоже, мне кажется, очень хороший индикатор, что вот время пришло. И вот, завершая свое выступление, хочу вернуться к тематике искусственного интеллекта, с которой начался сегодняшний конгресс. И вы, Александр Александрович, говорили о том, сможет ли заменить искусственный интеллект философию. Мне кажется, проблема очень серьезная, она связана вот с тем, о чем я говорил выше. Вот можем ли мы убрать философский запрос вообще из как бы сознания любого человека, независимо от его возраста? Наверное, нет. Но вот вопрос, вот эти философские проблемы, они возникают благодаря удивлению, как говорил Аристотель, благодаря взрослению, благодаря столкновению со смертью, как говорил Хайдеггер. Как они появляются? И вот мне кажется, что источником генерирования философских проблем может выступить что угодно на самом деле. И все вышеперечисленное, и даже совершенно не философские вещи. Вот мы же не спорим с тем, что в учебнике по философии никакой нет. Да? Но определен контур там, перечень какой-то, как шутят некоторые историки философии, не перечень, извините, список мертвецов приведен, вот мы можем, значит, их как-то там ранжировать по алфавиту, хронологически или еще как-то. Но вот даже если мы представим себе гипотетически, что все философы умерли, все исчезли, философские проблемы, никто не сможет их вот вживую воспроизвести, но при этом останется хотя бы один философский учебник, и этот философский учебник попадет кому-то в руки, то я вас уверяю, что философия опять возродится. То есть даже как бы мертвая философия может порождать живую философию, если такая дихотомия будет позволительна.
Я бы все-таки не был так оптимистичен. Не все учебники по философии помогут возродить, если что, философию. Есть такие, которые ее могут окончательно похоронить. Феликс Евгеньевич, спасибо вам огромное. Спасибо.
Но тут вопрос, тогда вопрос грифа.
Безусловно. Роман Викторович.
Roman Viktorovich, so the floor is yours, Alexander Alexandrovich, distinguished colleagues. I would mention two things. I will try to be brief. First is the general position. So I'm the historian. I'm the, well, the historian, the philosophy historian. So then, and I will be speaking about the history of philosophy, but from this point of view, we used to study in our Soviet universities that before Karl Marx, philosophy explained the world, but then came the stage when we had to change the world. So that actually changed quite much in the mindset of the people. And it was wrong, because philosophy is always about changing the world. So these changes could be accumulated, or the reasons for such changes can be accumulating. Because Plato asked, what is beauty? What is good as, the absolute category? And these are the fundamental approaches and fundamental civilization approaches to some other ways and some other tasks to, or some other mode of asking questions. Because it depends on where you are. You can be a Buddhist and you can ask the same questions, but with a different background. And so it's kind of long story. But if we think about the shorter ones, in the beginning of the 20th century, people studied two very popular books, Wittgenstein and so then the Dawn of Europe. Yeah, so the other one. Yeah, so but that's a great part. So that was a great revival to the civilization model of the world. So philosophy changes the world, and when we thought about celebrating, or the way how we can celebrate Kant's anniversary, we decided to place huge billboards on Kant's Island with his quotations about philosophy. So what philosophy is about, different things which were quite comprehensible about philosophy. So that people could see it and could think about it. But as for the philosophy, Felix Evgenievich made very good, spoke very well about the philosophy and business people. So I guess that they correlate very well. But I would speak about the philosophy and pedagogics. So like philosophy and school, and secondary school at first. I think that philosophy is really very important for pedagogical institutes and universities. So it can give us some food for thought. 3 days ago, Pedagogical Congress started in Kaliningrad, and about 300 participants came there, including the international participants. And in one of the seminars which I headed, which I conducted in that Congress, I asked the participants to look at the pedagogical process from a different side, from a different angle. Socrates said that when I talk to somebody, I learn from somebody. It's not just like mirroring somebody else, but it's kind of the way of learning and the way of the way of learning about the world, and that can apply to teaching and to pedagogics, because if it's not like very kind of robust pedagogics. So it's about the process of mutual learning. When I teach somebody, so you can learn from that somebody. And you always ask the questions, you always ask yourself, what do I learn? What am I learning from the person that I work with? And my pedagogical colleagues asked me, so what I meant, because they thought that it was pure philosophy. But actually, that is something that they lack, the element that their education and their work is lacking. So we have to ask ourselves and how we can shape the most important element of our work. That's the interaction with children and interaction with children who can teach the grown-ups a lot, because that is one of the elements which can then identify the way that we take in the future. And so that can bring us to what we are in the future, builders, constructors, or, creators, and so on. Yeah, so philosophy has got a very good history and very rich history. And it has seen ups and downs, and it has seen good and bad days. But whatever happened to philosophy, it always saw the revival. And it can have different names, and it can be given different status. But it has always been very instrumental. So if we check the questions which are asked by the experts and by some people from some other disciplines, so we can see that all of them refer to philosophy. Yeah, and that is why I think that the future of philosophy is very optimistic. Thank you, Roman Viktorovich. And so we had such a brief genre, and so we had this kind of interaction, and we've heard the statements of 4 very important people who represent the modern philosophical world, and we ask them to give their own opinion, and I'm sure that this opinion must be published. I hope that we will have the chance and we will have the opportunity to publish this opinion in the collection of works of our Congress. And as the history shows us, it's not only our civilization, but it's the history of the global civilization. So it shows that these philosophical questions always arise. The philosophy of ideology and the philosophy of, new ideas. And so the attempts to use diachronic approach to philosophical issues, and to see the use and the benefit for both society and a human. So the philosophy as a science, all these topics have been mentioned many times in our discussions, but they are not only relevant, but they ask for some new dimensions and new solutions. And especially at the moment when Russia is, thinking very actively about its future, and we are defining our future. And so in the way of protecting philosophy and making it even more useful, we have to talk about it. So the construction of all this rhetoric is rather paradoxical, but instead of looking for some paradoxes, it's better to think about solutions. And it's better to focus on some pragmatic approach to what we want to achieve. I wouldn't be moralizing or concluding about this part of our Congress, and I would like to to thank and to express my gratitude to everyone who has come to Baltic Federal University on this day. Thank you a lot.
Коллеги, никуда не расходимся, у нас сейчас пленарный доклад.
Dear colleagues, please stay in the hall. We are going to have a plenary report.
Коллеги, рассаживаемся потихонечку, мы продолжаем. У нас
Colleagues, please take your seats. We continue. We have a plenary session now.
до кофе-паузы еще
We have 45 minutes before coffee break.
40. Дорогие коллеги, занимайте, пожалуйста, места. Мы продолжаем.
Esteemed colleagues, please take your seats so we continue.
Дорогие коллеги, пожалуйста, занимайте свои места. Мы продолжаем.
Esteemed colleagues, please take your seats so we continue. I'm honored to give the floor to the next plenary speaker, Vladimir Vasilyev, Doctor of Philosophy. Ma'am,
Истории
Head of the Department of History of International Philosophy,
Михаила Васильевича Ломоносова.
Lomonosov Moscow State University. He is co-organizer of the Moscow Center for Studies for Cognition. It's a very famous center in Russia for philosophy of cognition.
Философии XVIII века по философии
And he's a very famous specialist in Kant's philosophy and modern analytical philosophy. Vladimir Valerievich, so the topic of your report is Unsolved Mysteries of Kantian Philosophy. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. I would like to say that I'm very much honored to be here on this day and to give a report. And I hope I will not disappoint you with my presentation, and I will try to say something interesting. You can see the topic of my presentation. Of course, on Kant's 300th anniversary and in such a professional company, I would like to begin my report on the interpretive difficulties. And I would like to start it with some achievements of world and Russian Kantian studies. And then we will speak about what we did not manage to do. I will not talk about the world ones now, but I will talk about the Russian studies. I have to say about this. There really is something to be proud of here. Our compatriots have achieved a lot in a variety of areas. And I would like to mention to show two outstanding people from biographical studies of Arseny Guliga. You can see him on the left. Two original interpretations of Kantian philosophy in general, which were proposed in particular. I will mention not all of them. First of them, this is Mamardashvili Zhuchkov. He had a very deep, in-depth understanding of Kant. Then Leonard Kalinnikov, you can see him on in the slide on the right. Probably he's here in this hall. And of course, and he will give his speech the day after tomorrow on at this Congress. We can be proud of a bilingual publication of Kant's works initiated by Nelly Matroshilova in collaboration with some German partners. We can be proud of studies of the influence of Kant's ideas on Russian philosophy and culture by Kruglov, Nina Dmitrieva, and of course many others. So I could continue this list. I would like to say only one thing. The high level of Russian Kant studies was also confirmed by the books. We haven't seen it yet, but the books published for today's anniversary. A 3-volume set of Kant's works with new translations and commentaries and several collective monographs on Kant's philosophy. The people who were responsible for this project are also here in this hall. So, despite all our achievements, much remains to be done. And today I want to speculate about some unsolved mysteries or some difficult interpretations of Kantian philosophy. There are a lot of theories about this question, but there is an important moment. There is no agreement among Kant scholars regarding the solution of this question. And it's somewhat troubling that these questions touch upon not only some marginal themes of Kant's philosophy or his minor writings. Unresolved difficulties, as we shall see, are concentrated at the very heart of his system. So my speech will be quite long, and it will be built on this way. First, I will talk about these mysteries themselves, then I will use such a working methodology, I believe, working methodology, to provide some factual evidence that there is no consensus on these issues on Kantian studies. So I will do it this way. I will take 2 big or major works on Kant, so summarizing works, one in English, one in German, and we will see that this work, which somewhat summarize Kant's studies, there is no detailed discussion of these mysteries. So it only indicates that there is no consensus on this. And then I will take the latest of 2, the most influential Western Kantian journals, and we will see that these topics haven't been discussed lately up to until 2024. So there is no consensus and these topics are not discussed. So, but that's at the end. And I will give you some details later. And of course, I will draw some conclusions. Let's start with mysteries, with some obvious things. No one will argue that the focus of Kant's critical system and his transcendental project is the critique of pure reason. That's obvious. As you know, many people remember that many people were anticipating the appearance of this work, but after its release, this work turned out to be extremely difficult to understand Kant. So it worried people, it worried Kant, and in 3 years he published an explanation treatise, Prolegomena to any further metaphysics. Among other interesting things that Kant says in the Prolegomena,
Переходим к первой.
and here we're getting to the first enigma or first mystery.
Любопытные
There are interesting thoughts about the discrepancy between the methods.
зацепка наша. Рассуждения о несовпадении методов
So, some thoughts about the discrepancy between the methods that he himself followed in the critique of pure reason and in the Prolegomena
говорит
themselves.
Гомина в левой
In the Prolegomena, on the left, you can see,
кусочки
by the way, this is part of original text 1783, sorry. And all the passages that I'm going to show you on the screen, these are photocopies of original publications. So, on the right,
видите, что
you can see
в критике в первой
in the critique, in the first edition, he follows synthetic method.
не столько важны.
We don't need any details. So, he follows different methods.
Объясняет, что
And in principle, Kant explains what he meant here. The analytical methods,
развлечение. Вот. Когда мы следуем аналитическому методу
the analytical methods relies on some facts
и выявляем
and reveals the conditions for their possibility. Kant called them regressive. While the synthetic method, that's in the first edition of Ethics, does not need such support, so they don't need any facts and find all the sources in pure reason. In Prolegomena, Kant starts from the facts of the existence of the a priori synthetic judgments, and that was one of his main tasks,
априорные синтетические.
how to understand a priori synthetic engrossment. But in the critique, he proves their existence. So that's how we can interpret this. It's all very interesting, but there are any mysteries here yet. However, they will appear now.
Гомина
In the Prolegomena, Kant, of course, refers to the first edition of the critique.
второго просто не было. Но второе
But the second edition appeared 4 years after the Prolegomena. It was partially revised,
введение
and surprisingly,
ко второму изданию
in the introduction to the second edition, there appear passages that literally repeat the text of the Prolegomena, and they are specific to the analytical method of this work. You can see one of the pages, page 14.
это уже второе
It's the second edition of the critique
издание 780
of
выделил. Текст он
1787. So this text is mechanically taken from the Prolegomena.
довольно большие куски. Ну так вот, значит, во втором издании критики получается, как и в
So in the second edition of critiques of the critique, as in the Prolegomena, Kant unambiguously declares the fact of existence of a priori synthetic judgments. Does it mean that the second edition of the critique is structured according to the analytical method, as the Prolegomena? But the general structure of Kant's argumentation has changed little comparing to the first edition. Then
самому Канту.
the first was made according to, then it turns out that it's still synthetic, or not. So here's the first of the unsolved mysteries of Kantian philosophy.
Перевести. По какому методу?
We can put a question here. By what method was the second edition of the Critique of Pure Reason constructed? And according to analytical or synthetic method? Or is it generally incoherent in methodological terms?
Вопросы эти
These questions are little discussed in modern Kantian studies. And of course, there is no consensus here. This is just my opinion for the moment. Okay, now let's do the following. Probably we shouldn't focus on the second edition of the critique. Maybe we should listen to the recommendations of Schopenhauer or Heidegger and work with the first edition,
инкогерентности.
where we don't have this incoherence.
Последовав
So if we follow these steps, However, we may stumble upon an even greater mystery if we turn to the first edition. Let me remind you that the main task of the critic of pure reason is to study the possibility of a priori synthetic judgments, or more precisely, true a priori synthetic judgment that have the status of knowledge. Even a cursory glance at the composition of the critique is enough to convince oneself that the key decisions on this issue are concentrated in the so-called transcendental deduction of categories. This is a complex and intricate study, which is very famous for its intricative character. It occupies pages from 84 to 130 in the first edition of Critique. You can't say which paragraphs are that, because there are no paragraphs in the first edition. Kant himself speaks about the difficulty of deduction in the preface of the first edition, and at the same time he notes that the deduction has two sides, subjective and objective. So, specific characteristics of these parts are not important to us. What is important to us is that here you can see the new illustration, the new picture. This part is very important for us, from preface to the first edition. And here Kant clearly states that the main thing for solving the problems of the critique is objective deduction, and that everything necessary for this deduction is said on pages 92 and 93. And these are his last words, and agree that even without having a glance at these pages, 92, 93, we can see that there is a surprising statement. The deduction is a big part. It occupies pages from 83 to 130. And then he says that that deduction has two sides. One is important to me. And for this important part, and then the most important about this, he says on pages 92, 93. How can this happen? What is said there on those pages? That two pages are enough for deduction, which, again, solves the main task of the critique. Let's look at these pages. Here you can see how these paragraphs are called. Transition to transcendental deduction. So this is not a deduction, but introduction to this. Moreover, only one paragraph.
Пара абзацев, но это какой-то парадокс.
That's a kind of paradox.
Занимающий центральное место в композиции критики.
To make deduction of categories, it's one paragraph is enough.
Как парадокс.
It sounds like a paradox, or probably Kant simply misspoke. Probably he confused something. It's hard to believe it. But what do Kantian studies tell us about this? Actually, nothing. This issue is almost not discussed, although deduction itself has always been the focus of attention in Western Kantian studies. And there are a lot of interpretations. I will mention them if I have enough time. But even in these books, you will not find the discussion of these issues. How can it be there? What is meant here? But the lack of detailed discussion of the mystery mentioned above largely devalues efforts to interpret it. And, of course, understanding of the nature of Kantian project of transcendentality.
Хорошо. Ну, давай.
Okay.
Структура и роль дедукции.
The structure and role of the deduction of the remain the mystery,
усилий предпринято.
another unresolved mystery of the Kantian philosophy, but there is no consensus,
Вот этот центральный
and the central question is avoided or is neglected, not by everyone, but perhaps we will be able to make progress in its solution,
категории. Если
and we will try to clarify the historical origins of the deduction and Kant's critical project as a whole. It's very promising way,
и он
and
перспективен,
so this path seems promising because Kant himself in Prolegomena speaks quite extensively about these origins, which he calls his awakening from dogmatic slumber.
помню вам какие
Let me remind you of the expressions that he uses. You can see them well highlighted or underlined in the page. He asserts that the hint,
указания, думаю, все-таки напоминание.
the reminder, I would say, that would be the right word to say, the right word to translate it. Okay, the indication or the hint of Hume many years ago first awakened him from dogmatic slumber and gave his speculations in the field of philosophy a completely different or completely new direction.
Ну, Кант
Moreover,
уже, очень интересная фраза. Для истории
so that's a very interesting phrase. For the historian, philosophy is a very attractive field. You try to dig deeper, and you always make an effort to understand what quote of Hume is mentioned, and what action he took, and which direction he moved. So
Кант, он довольно подробно
the final question is answered by Kant himself. So he actually speaks about the developments of Hume within the context,
и действий он
which actions he took
познал.
after he understood the power of Hume's argument and reason.
Должно прийти
Uh,
к консенсусу.
Of course, so the Kantian society must come to a consensus regarding when exactly the awakening occurred and in what context it took place. However, surprisingly, there is no consensus on this question either. It must be acknowledged that the difficulties of these questions are related to a number of objective circumstances. Firstly, if we analyze what we can see here in these pages, so it follows that the awakening from dogmatic slumber was associated with Kant's reflection on the results of Hume's analysis of causality,
Пробудило осмысление
but
Юма.
so it made him awake from dogmatic slumber as a result of the analysis of Hume's reasons. But, well, much later, in a letter to Christian Gareth, Kant said that he woke up from his dogmatic slumber as a result of the analysis of antinomies.
Правда, вот надо заметить, что
Well, but we have to mention that
Кант говорит,
even in Prolegomena, Kant said that antinomies can bring you out of dogmatic slumber, and this problem can be eased or can be solved.
в тексте
And he mentioned it in much later text.
то, что он безлично здесь говорил, то
And
этого
so the power of this statement
пробуждает
that
его
he was woken up from dogmatic slumber by Hume's reasoning, but not the analysis of antinomies. So in this very text, he impersonally said that such an awakening could be possible. There were some other interpretations
Автор одной из них
that which could bring together the antinomic problem and Hume problem. So, but many critics acknowledged such reasoning inconstructive. And what is the situation in the modern Kantian studies? There is not a unanimous opinion, but very many Kantian studies say that Kant's reasoning in the prolegomena about the awakening from dogmatic slumber does not have an autobiographical character. So there is that this is a post-facto reconstruction. So such a solution can be understood, but still it's rather striking. However, although well, if we start rejecting even such detailed autobiographical evidence, we will undermine the evidentiary basis of historical reconstructions as such. To take such a position, very strong grounds and confidence are required. But, well, still the topic of dogmatic, from awakening from dogmatic slumber is hardly discussed. So it still remains a mystery. Okay, encountering difficulties regarding the origins of Kant's project, we might hope to better understand it by turning to Kant's main... Well, so we can understand him better by turning to Kant's main goals and intentions. Well, here Kant also helps us, emphasizing in particular that one of his most important achievements is the salvation of freedom, human freedom. So we can remember how Kant saves freedom. Our natural world is deterministic, but he argues a human can be absolutely free as a nominal being. However, even with a cursory examination of this solution, it becomes evident that Kant will have, so that we will have a very hard time trying to understand all Kant's mysteries. So here everything is subject to the law of natural causality. Everything is determined. In other words, how can nominal freedom break through into the phenomenal world? Kant, of course, saw this problem and attempted to solve it with the thesis that the phenomenal character of people correspond to their intelligible characters. In other words, so that was Kant's logic. Yeah, so the actions of person are determined, but the character of determination depends on the free, choice. And so it depends also, and it is done on the level of their intelligible characters. So how can we interpret the free choice of individual? So the standard choice is conceived as the process in time, but the nominal level is atemporal or atemporal. Well, so another question, even if we accept that the empirical character of people correspond to their nominal free decisions, how do we explain the fact of the harmony of these decisions, which are taken by each and every individual, and their manifestations in the unified phenomenal world? So the phenomenal world is unified. It is, holistic. It is the whole. Yeah, so this, can we do without the assumption of higher coordinating divine being here? And does such an assumption, doesn't such an assumption violate the nominal freedom of human personalities? So does it violate the nominal freedom? All these questions are only touched upon by Kant, but the pressure that he felt, and he acknowledged it, is noticeable from extraordinary terminological and conceptual solutions he undertook to defend his positions.
плане номинальной свободы
to
пригодится это.
simplify or to reinforce the thesis of the existence of nominal freedom. For example, he claimed that the moral law, on condition of which is nominal freedom exists, is the sole fact of pure reason. Yeah, so you can see it underlined here in the slide. So that's the sole fact of pure reason.
В том же духе
In the same spirit,
малоизвестных, редко используемых в литературе
in the same spirit, another thought of his is sustained, that our actions are non-transcendentally supersensible. Overall, Kant felt a certain dissatisfaction with his attempts to create a coherent theory here. He spoke about the paradoxical nature of it. In one of his lectures, he said that the concept of freedom cuts through knots. So he had to cut through rather than unravel. There is no consensus in Kantian literature regarding how to understand this Kantian argument.
В дискурсе, где мы говорим о свободе,
So to cut through knots, to accept the fact of soul, the sole fact of pure reason. So,
консенсуса нет.
There is no consensus. The last unresolved mystery of Kantian philosophy that I want to mention today about the existence of the non-transcendental supersensible is his response to the criticism which was coming from Jacobi. So that is the criticism of his position regarding the status of the concept of the thing in itself. Yes. You cannot enter a Kantian paradigm without this notion, and you cannot stay with it within this paradigm. Of course, the criticism of the inconsistency of this famous concept began to fall onto Kant just over a few years after the publication of his work. So let's have a look at this draft. It's not the original text. It's the 18th volume, and here you can see that he spoke about the intellectual contemplation, the intellectual contemplation of the spacious objects. Why did he do it? Why did he speak about the spatial objects of intellectual contemplation? Because intellectual contemplation brings us together with the things in themselves. So he had to find the place for thing in itself in his system. So so it is considered to be the end of the 80s, but there are some other fragments, some other episodes, some other abstracts. So that's the beginning of the 1790s, where he speaks about intellectual contemplation. And that was the revolution in his studies to accept the intellectual contemplation. Very interesting points, very interesting fragments. They were not published in the original version of the text, but how can they be interpreted? It's unresolved. Think how they can be interpreted in his works.
So it's not only mystery; it's unsolved mystery of Kantian philosophy. With this, I conclude the first main part of my speech. In the second part, I promise to prove that in Kantian studies there is no consensus on the issues mentioned. I will do this. I will try to prove this. I will do this in this way. I will take relatively recent summarizing works in Kant in German and in English. There are no modern works in this genre in Russian about any. we have such book about Pascal, about Bresson in Russian, but we don't have such books in Russian about Kant. So
Русскоязычных очень интересно.
I will take some interesting Russian researchers. So let's take two summarizing works. Paul Geyer's work of 2006, and the second book is Kant Handbook by Gerd Ehrlich.
Обобщающая работа это
So it's assumed that summarizing works are a kind of mirror of the achievements of one of another branch. So what is reflected there? Let's start with Geyer. Let's take the mysteries which I mentioned. He doesn't discuss when the awakening happened. He doesn't mention the Kant's idea about deduction. He calls Kant's reasoning about the synthetic method of the first critique mysterious. In general, either he passes by the mentioned mysteries altogether or does not consider them at all.
тут и нет
So
никакого решения. Нечто
we see that there is no solution in Kantian studies about this. We see something similar in Ehrlich's work. He speaks vaguely about revival, about some awakening, without. So I said that it was in 2015.
Да, ну и другие вопросы тоже по касательной.
So, and he touches upon other issues just in passing, without drawing conclusions.
Упоминаю практической элиминации,
He doesn't mention eliminations of deductions.
ничего такого
He mentions
особенного не говорится о
no. He says nothing special about the problem of the methods of the second edition of the critics, etc. So, in general, basing on the summarizing works, we can conclude that the topics of interest to us until recently were perceived as unsolved and were not in the focus of attention. In 2015, about 2015, they were not in the focus of our attention.
не были в фокусе внимания. Но может ситуация изменится.
But maybe the situation has changed recently, from 2015 to 2024. To answer this question, you can turn to the statistics of publications of well-known or famous Western journals. We have a very good Russian journal, which Nina Anatolievna turned into a first-class one. So I started speaking about Western journals devoted to Kantian studies. This is Kant Studieren and Kantian Review. Looking at the publications of recent year, we can see that none of the listed mysteries attracts attention. In Kant Studieren, I have found only a couple of articles directly related to our mysteries since 2016. Both of them are devoted to the theme of transcendental freedom.
Чаще всего, если
So you can ask what do they discuss if the mysteries connected with the basics of Kantian philosophy are not discussed. So ethnical aspects of Kantian philosophy are very popular
ну даже такие
in different variations, but even such marginal topics as Kant's judgments about chemistry,
не считал. Значит,
which Kant didn't consider to be a science, they are of more interest than in these journals. Then they are of more interest than our mysteries. That's about Kant Studieren. As for Kantian Review, there are about 150 articles, among 150 articles in the considered during the period in consideration. Only one is directly related to our mystery. The authors are mostly articles are interested in Kant's ethics and political theories. So what are the conclusions? Now I'm getting to the final part.
то прежде всего я разумею,
If we talk about journals, then first of all, yeah, I of course don't want to say that these journals have some kind of incorrect editorial policy or that the materials published in them are not interesting. They're very interesting. Nor do I want to say that there are no new interesting publications on the issues I mentioned. It's also not true. There have been several books published recently on transcendental deduction alone. For example, by Dennis Schuling in 2012, Henry Ellison in 2015, and many others. So my point is that these important topics, important because the interpretation of Kantian project depends on their understanding. So these topics are not in the focus of interests of the Kantian community as a whole. And this circumstance results in the fact that even if some historian of philosophy offers convincing solutions to these mysteries, so these solutions will most likely go unnoticed and will not change anything. After all, as Bruno Latour once perfectly showed, scientific facts become such only if they are recognized by the community of scientists. So far there is no such recognition, no facts, no consensus. But the recognition from the scientific community presupposes interest in related research. If there is no interest, there will be no facts, there will be no recognized theories, no real moving forward in Kant's. So, now, in general, we are now in a state where the unsolved mysteries of Kantian philosophy, which I spoke about in the report, are not solved and cannot be solved. However, their solution could open up new horizons for understanding Kant, which in turn could have a broader beneficial effect. But I think it is appropriate on these anniversary days to express hope that the situation will change. Great philosophers have never been afraid to pose very difficult tasks before themselves, and Kant was one of the most daring ones, even among greatest philosophers. Kant scholars who study Kant's works must be congenial to him in some way and must not give in to difficulties. And I do really hope that in the years of the next major Kant anniversaries, they will be able to talk about progress in these areas. Thank you very much. So we have no time for questions, and that's good, because I may not answer all of them. No, we won't let you go like this. Please, colleagues, we have some time for questions. Let's take 2 questions and 2 answers, of course. I have a question about the mystery of awakening from dogmatic slumber. Don't you think that this mystery has become a deadlock? Because in order to solve it, you need to have some new texts, not interpretation, but new texts. The point is that, as far as I remember, in 1989, Karl wrote that what Kant wrote about the awakening from dogmatic slumber does not correspond with the real situation in his life. It looks like as if Kant deluded us. Isn't it a deadlock? And some of the mysteries which you mentioned, aren't they deadlocks? Thank you very much for your question. I believe that well, in my opinion, I believe no. So I believe that it's possible to solve these mysteries, but what I said at the ending of my speech, it does not matter, because neither I nor any other person who express his vision or suggests some solution to this, it will be spoken into the air, because there is no interest from Kantinian community to these topics at the moment. So in a sense, for the moment, the situation is in a deadlock. But if there is a discussion, someone will propose some theory for discussing. You can say that it has been discussed for a lot of times and there has been no solution achieved, no result. Partially, it is so, but in my opinion, Kantian studies are moving forward, and a lot more attention is given to Kant's manuscripts, to lectures, to other documents. So the level of interpretation is much higher at the moment. So I believe we have to resume these discussions at a new level. That's what my speech, my presentation was aimed at, to bring interest back to these topics.
Большое спасибо.
Thank you very much, Vladimir Valerievich. And my question is about the ethical freedom and how it can be well realized in modern world. I thought that even if I disagree with your pessimistic evaluation of Kantian society, and probably the interest will arise, probably there is a different problem. Probably the thing is that, well, Kant contradicts himself. And so probably some issues cannot be resolved because Kant does not know how to resolve them. But I was going to ask about Kantian metaphysical interpretation, and I wanted to ask if nominal perfection could become the key to solve the mystery of the relations between freedom and necessity of the actions in his critical period. So the question is huge and very complicated. His dissertation of 1770s is of great interest to me, because to me it has always been the perfect interpretation of this, of the interpretation of his work as a kind of of the patched. So his theory, his dissertation is accepted as a kind of patched work, as if it is the patched theory. But I guess that, so this, well, to me, this dissertation is a kind of patchwork from non-coherent elements. And that could be the explanation to this question. I do not think that his dissertation is very useful in this aspect, because it's kind of half-ready product. I cannot see it from this. But probably you are right, and you have got the brilliant opportunity to speak about it at your department, and it will be really very interesting for us to hear it. So thank you so much for this question, and I guess that it will be interesting to work on it in the future. Another question, the final one, Vladimir Valerievich. First, I would like to express my gratitude to you for this wonderful presentation. But while you were speaking, well, another mystery arose. So in the beginning of your presentation, you named works in Russian which were devoted to Kant, and unfortunately there was no work there among these works. There was no work which was published to his 250th jubilee anniversary, and that was the work of Valentin Asmus. And there was another work which you missed. So another work of Valentin Asmus, which you also missed, but he raises a very important issue on transcendental ethics and transcendental being, which gives some light to the mysteries that you have been speaking about. And it's not a question, but a comment. Yeah, well, and was it, did you miss him, well, intentionally or what? No, of course, it was not intentionally. I wanted to mention Valentin Asmus, and we all in our department, we all adore his works, and we acknowledge him as one of the major leaders in Kantian studies. And of course, I wanted to mention him, but I think that it's not a big work about a big philosopher, not the major work of the major philosopher. Well, I don't consider Asmus's works on Kant very successful. So I think that his interpretations are not the most interesting, but at the same time, it's a considerable work. It's a significant work, but I don't consider Asmus as important Kantian researcher as the other ones whom I've mentioned. So, though, of course, it's a, well, good researcher.
Да. Да.
Простите, короткий вопрос.
Очень.
Very short question, very short question. The questions about the process in intelligible world. Do you think that they do not have to be considered regular processes which happen in human society, but the processes which happen in intelligible world affect the phenomenal world? So, and that means that phenomenal world approaches intelligible world. So I don't understand how this, how we can speak about the processes in nominal world, because we on the same at the same time we speak about the freedom of God and the interpretations of God, and God is out of time and beyond the realm of time and space. But Kant makes rather well strange comments. And he says that the result of the world, of the choice, of the solution of the choice identifies our choice since birth or even before birth. And so then it relates to nominal world. And there was no consciousness of the choice. But at the same time, every choice means consciousness. And well, probably Natasha is right. And we actually do not know if Kant succeeded in it. But to understand if he succeeded in that, we have to study him more. We have to study the works more. Thank you so much, Vladimir Valerievich, for wonderful presentation. And distinguished colleagues, please pick up your clothes and let's be quick in our transfer to Cathedral. So please pick up your clothes and we'll go straight to the bus. Otherwise, we will be late for the other events this evening. So please be